From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez. This is From the South, the morning news brief on Telesur English. We begin this new edition right now. We start in Honduras, where the opposition candidate Salvador Nasralla has agreed to talks with President Orlando Hernandez after the Electoral Court declared Hernandez the winner of last month's election. But Nasralla continues to insist he won and says the talks should be about holding new elections.
First, I want to say that my success in the presidential elections in Honduras on 26th of November is the result of the firm expression and free will of the majority of the Honduran people.
Opposition supporters have held another night of protest against what they see as fraud in the counting of the votes. The police fired tear gas at them and as they set up roadblocks in several parts of the capital and other cities. Human rights groups have denounced the action of the police, including what they say is the torture of detained protesters. And some opposition protesters say they do not believe in any dialogue with President Hernandez.
We are continuing with our indignation with this, until now, peaceful blockade. Our protests are always like this, until the repressive teams of state that serve the president, who is stealing the elections on November 26, appear.
Our dignity has been stolen. Our vote has been stolen. I did not vote for Juan Orlando Hernandez. I voted for the opposition alliance, for the government of Salvador Nasralla, the president elected by the people.
We now go to Argentina, where protests have also gone into the night, after the Congress passed President Mauricio Macri's pension reform at dawn on Tuesday. We have more details in the report from our correspondent in Buenos Aires.
In the middle of the debate for the pension reform, a massive event sprung up in the least expected neighborhoods, reaching all the way to Plaza de Mayo. Sectors that supported the government's policies took to the streets to reject the reform.
It's the Argentine people who shout loudly and say enough, stop this, and who deal with repression and bad moments and go to the streets to demand that their rights are respected.
It's an absolutely spontaneous mobilization, a consequence of the insensitivity of the government and the cynicism with which they are communicating a cut to retirees of billions of pesos. The truth is that the Argentinian people are not willing to let the thread be cut off by its thinnest part.
The Cambiemos Alliance, accompanied by lawmakers, finally turned the provisional reform into a law which reduces the benefits for pensioners. Those with disabilities, former Malvinas war combatants, and those receiving subsidies for children or pregnancy.
His is basically a very strong adjustment on the most neglected sectors, and with less lobbying capacity. Because it's not true that it's the only solution. Macri could think about charging a little to the sectors that were freed from paying taxes, forgiving their debt. It's not like that. It's against the retirees to make a buck adjustment.
The next day, the elderly began to suffer the economic measures imposed by Macri's government against those who have less and reject the new pension law that harms them even more and takes away their hopes of living with dignity.
In reality, the reform not only harms retirees, removing them from what they will receive, but will also harm the next generations. Because if you have to retire at 70 years old, you will see groups that will need to continue working because the government needs to pay the external debt.
But at the end, the debate was over after leaving more than 60 people injured and hundreds detained, opening a wound that would be difficult to close.
After the pension law was passed, Argentina's President Mauricio Macri gave a news conference when he defended and thanked the police for their actions during the protest. He said he was sure the violence was planned by opposition groups.
Pero lo que les quiero decir
What I want to tell you is that all that violence we saw was clearly orchestrated. We will face it with justice to understand who was responsible, because it wasn't spontaneous. In Argentina, we live in a climate of peace. There is hope for the future.
Two former Ford executives accused of helping the Argentine military to kidnap and torture workers were put on trial Tuesday. Former Ford factory director Pedro Mueller and ex-security manager Héctor Francisco Jesus Sevilla are accused of allowing kidnapping and torture of 24 workers from the U.S. firm during Argentina's 1976 through 1983 dictatorship. The trial is expected to last for months. The Peruvian Congress has started an impeachment process against President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski after corruption accusations link him to the Brazilian company Odebrecht. 130 Congress members will meet next Thursday to vote for the removal of President Kuczynski. According to the Peruvian constitution, 2/3 or 87 votes are required for the impeachment. Our correspondent in Lima, Verónica Insausti, has more details in the next report.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Bueno, en caso if the impeachment against Pedro Pablo Kuczynski comes into effect, the country's constitution dictates that the first vice president of Peru, Martín Vizcarra, would have to take office. If Vizcarra refuses to become president, it would be the second vice president, Mercedes Arauz, who would lead the nation, although she can too refuse, and in that case it would be the president of the Congress, Luis Galarreta, as the one assigned to take office for a year. During this time, he would require to call for elections to choose a president and 130 congressmen. President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski remains in his home since his last public appearance, where he is meeting with several members of his political party as well as lawmakers, ministers, and experts that are advising him on what to do next.
That was Verónica Insausti from Lima. Marcelo Odebrecht, the former president of the Brazilian construction company, has been released from prison and placed under house arrest. The former CEO left a Curitiba prison after serving 2.5 years behind bars. He will be given a monitoring ankle bracelet and return to his luxury home in Sao Paulo. Odebrecht has been accused of several corruption and bribery cases in Brazil and across Latin America. More news in a minute. Stay with us. Another journalist has been murdered in Mexico, the 12th this year. 35-year-old Gumaro Perez, who regularly wrote about security and drug trafficking, was shot at 4 times and killed in Veracruz state as he attended a Christmas party at his son's school. 2017 has been the deadliest year so far for media workers in Mexico.
I will want that above all else justice be done, that these assailants be arrested, because it's not possible for them to be allowed to go on killing like it's nothing. They have no respect. 6-year-old children are traumatized because the way my husband was killed, where he was, where we all were, how it was done.
Above all, it's up to the Attorney General. But what we can do is to guide authorities in this case. That's what I've got to do now. Talk to the family and journalists to see if they know anything they want to share.
One of the most dangerous and insecure municipalities in Mexico is just a few kilometers away from the center of its capital. Take a look at it in the next report.
Tanya lives at the top of a hill. She says the moment she leaves her house, she's in danger, and she's not the only one. In the last year, at least 8 of every 10 people here in Ecatepec have been victims of a crime, and many people live under lockdown.
Here in our community, there are spaces for children to play or to do sports. We need schools, and our daily concern, more security.
David grew up locked up at home, without being able to play football or ride a bicycle. He's grown up used to the risks of living in the most dangerous municipality in the state of Mexico.
I was robbed. They came into Puente de Fierro to steal a combi. There was a police car there, but they didn't do anything.
This municipality, which has always been governed by the current government party, the PRI, is not only one of the most densely populated, but it also has the highest poverty rates.
In the neoliberal model that has operated for 30 years here in Mexico, one of its principles is the reduction of public spending. Ecatepec is exactly an expression of this neglect by the system.
The last police commissioner quit when he didn't get results after 2 years. According to some experts, the solution is not having more police, but fighting poverty.
No hay vigilancia, no hay resultados.
Access to life and justice is not being made available to these people. We have suicides, femicides. There are cases of young men who are murdered for not handing over their cell phones, which means life here is worth less than a cell phone.
The situation is worse for women, even though a gender alert is in place. It's estimated that femicides have doubled since 2015.
Russia and Cuba have renewed commercial, military and political ties as the U.S. government under Donald Trump reduces their relationship with the island. Russian automobile company Lara will ship 300 new automobiles to Cuba by next month. The first shipment in more than a decade. Over the past 9 months, Russian exports to Cuba increased 81% as part of the new trade and economic strategies between the nations. Now to Venezuela, where a grassroots movement of community media is providing an alternative to the mainstream dominance of commercial channels. Community-run radio stations operate throughout the country, encouraging the social development of citizens, as well as promoting the freedom of speech as a basic right for all to participate. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, went along to find out more.
Radio Libre Negro Primero is a 24-hour radio station that provides for the Sarria community of Caracas. It broadcasts a whole range of programming, with topics ranging from the history of Haiti to where you can buy bread at an affordable price. Run solely by volunteers, the station is a space where everyone can have a say.
I think that is a way to be informed about everything that happens around us. We keep the community informed about what happens in the world through the radio.
Community media is one of 3 types of media defined in Venezuelan law. As opposed to public and private, community stations like Negro Primero run autonomously. All the funding it receives comes from inside the channel, quite literally. The channel has its own bakery, where residents from Sarria make bread to be sold at prices which are affordable. In between making bread, community members also produce school uniforms, which are provided for their local school. With these small fundings, the station can survive.
All what we do is autonomous and self-sustained. During the last 5 years, we have emphasized on self-management, because we saw that the community radios cannot survive just by volunteers on these moments of economic war. Everything is very expensive, things like a microphone or equipment. So what have we done? We have created productive communities, making the community able to contribute to the project.
As of the year 2000, a Telecommunications Act put in place by the government declared that directors of community media cannot be party officials, members of the military, or be a part of mass private media. Stations must also provide training to the community. So whether it's ways of fighting crime in the neighborhood, or phone-ins from residents who have specific issues they want to be raised, this station is accessible to everyone who needs it most. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Bolivian doctors have clashed with police forces while protesting a new criminal code which could penalize doctors who cause health or bodily harm through negligence. Medical professionals tried to make their way to the government palace where they demanded to meet with President Evo Morales. National senators and social leaders said that the medical strike is politically motivated.
This demonstration is clear evidence that medical union representatives are also a part of several political parties. They respond to a political agenda.
Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos has named Gustavo Bell as the new government chief negotiator in the peace talks with the ELN after his predecessor stepped down. Santos said the government will work towards extending a ceasefire with the Marxist rebels, while the ELN has said it's willing to continue the ceasefire if there is sufficient progress in peace talks and that it would assess the government's willingness to overcome hurdles. Volcano photographer Dr. Richard Roscoe has documented the spectacular eruption of an active volcano early December in the Amazonian Andes of Ecuador, known as Reventador. Roscoe captured the fiery explosions with wide-angle lenses and then sped up the video to show the activity over the course of a 3-day period. Reventador's last recorded major activity was in 2002, when a huge eruption occurred and generated a 17-kilometer-high eruption cloud, wiping out a nearby valley. 11 people have been killed in a bus crash as the bus carrying tourists from a U.S. cruise ship to an archaeological site in Mexico crashed after running off the road. Another 20 people were injured in the accident, which happened in Quintana Roo, located in the eastern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula near Cancun. Nationalities of the fatalities reportedly include Italians and Canadians. Earlier this year, we brought you a series of reports from the Mapuche indigenous lands of southern Chile, an area seldom visited by journalists. To mark the end of 2017, we're giving you another chance to see these exclusive stories. Here's the first in the series by Telesur's Paola Dragnic and Juan Pablo Aranela.
We are traveling to Mapuche territory, over 800 kilometers from Santiago. As we approach the area, crossing the Biobío River, which is the natural frontier, the loggers' trucks start to fill the road. They never stop, at any time of the day. The logging is unending, but this isn't just any wood. These are monoculture plantations that plant and harvest over and over again on more than 2 million hectares of ancient land, seized from the communities and now controlled by the timber companies. These trucks represent the occupation of this land. They have become targets of arson attacks, for which the different Mapuche groups are held responsible, especially the coordinator Arauco Malleco, also known as CAM. Hector Yaitul is their spokesperson and has become one of the Mapuche villagers most persecuted by the timber companies and the Chilean state. He has lived in hiding after facing several charges of criminal association. The most recent case is still pending. It's a part of Operation Hurricane, a high-profile police operation which saw the arrest of several Mapuche leaders accused of terrorism. Among these, the media celebrated the capture of Hector Yaitul. But again, there was no real evidence. Now the Mapuche are denouncing a new attempt to criminalize their people, an attempt that was partially corrected by the Supreme Court when it revoked the preventive detention of Yaitul and other villagers. All of them are being investigated under Chile's anti-terrorist law enforced since the Pinochet dictatorship, which Hector Yaitul himself fought at the time. This time, the use of this controversial law claims some kind of collaboration between the Chilean and Argentinian Mapuche against the multinational companies, but the only evidence presented by prosecutors for this alleged plan were vague text messages on unidentified phones. The investigation continues, but Hector Yaitul, now free after his provisional release, decided to receive Telesur in his shelter to talk about this struggle, which he defined as a historic demand.
We're talking about a Mapuche struggle that marked a before and after in the way of doing politics, which incorporated the element of political violence, but from the oppressed, which responded to that history of structural violence from the state and the capitalist system, which was very severe in this region.
An asymmetric war, he says, like the one against the Incas waged by the Spanish and the settlers. The Mapuche people is facing this with a new one, or the strengthening of their Huichafe ancestors, as they call the warriors in the Mapudungun language. This time, the struggle is against capitalism, which he says has its best ally in the states that promote and protect the companies to exploit their ancient lands. Lands that he says they're willing to recover at any cost.
Esto está en recuperación. Claro, esto pertenecían a particulares y está en recuperación. A ambos lados.
We went deep into the back roads of these old indigenous reserves on the edge of the lake Leuleu. There, Hector Jaitul guided us to his cabin, convinced that the people of Latin America need to know firsthand about the struggle of the Mapuche people.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Tuesday marked the end of electoral campaigns in Catalonia. Elections were convened by Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy after dismissing the Catalonian government, dissolving their parliament, and invoking Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution, all in response to Catalonia's declaration of independence on October 27.
48 hours left before polling stations open and political messages have gotten even louder. The final televised debate happened on Monday. The main topics discussed were the economy, Article 155, and imprisoned or exiled politicians.
Our plan of action, as soon as it's possible, will be to form a government that puts a stop to Article 155.
The first thing that the President of the Generalitat will do, if elected, will be to once again appoint the previous government and to fix the mess created by the intervention of Article 155.
Unionists assured that seceding from Spain is not the solution to Catalan's problems.
I believe that the best alternative to secession is not immobility, but reformism.
You should join the opposition and leave the way open for a democratic government that cares about Catalonians' real issues.
Beyond the televised debates, this campaign has brought forth controversial statements.
Who do you think is responsible for the lack of leadership in the ERC, the Catalan European Democratic Party, Together for Catalonia, and all the other independence fighters? Who was responsible for beheading their leadership? Mariano Rajoy and the People's Party.
Mariano Rajoy y el Partido Popular.
By saying this, independence supporters consider that the Deputy Prime Minister admits justice has been favoring her party. Leaving all these parties with no leadership is something that was accomplished when the judicial power sent those leaders to jail. Another statement that has raised eyebrows comes from a former Minister of Public Works and Transportation, who called the independence movement an infected wound on society that must be cleaned.
Our society is wounded, and it must be healed. But before closing any wound, it must be disinfected.
Polls show a tie between the independence movement and unionism, but the only poll that matters will happen this coming Thursday.
And now let's take a look at some other news from around the world.
The Republican U.S. Senate has approved a sweeping $1.5 trillion tax bill, moving their party and President Donald Trump a step closer to the largest overhaul of the U.S. tax code in more than 30 years. The Republicans say that the tax cuts for corporations and small businesses will bolster economic growth.
I want to start off by thanking the American people, our constituents, for sending us here to do this work for them. This is one of the most important pieces of legislation that Congress has passed in decades to help the American worker, to help grow the American economy. This is profound change, and this is change that is going to put our country on the right path. For all those millions of men and women in America who are living paycheck to paycheck, who are struggling to get ahead, help is on the way. For all those businesses that are tied with one hand behind their back in this global economy, having a hard time compete, help is on the way.
Democrats who all voted against it say the package is a deficit bloating giveaway to the super rich.
What a disgrace. That's what this bill is. It's an absolute disgrace. It's not just an ideological difference. It is something dramatically opposite of what America needs. There is no reason for a single middle-class family to pay more while every single corporation pays less. If you wanted to help the middle class, give them a real tax break. The rich get far more dollars back than the middle class. That is fact, irrefutable fact.
The European Union has set the end of the United Kingdom's Brexit transition to December 31st, 2020. Both sides have yet to negotiate the terms for the transition period, which the UK calls an implementation phase. Cardinal Bernard Law, the former Archbishop of Boston, who became a symbol of the Roman Catholic Church's worldwide sexual abuse scandals, has died at the age of 86. The Vatican said Law, whose resignation from his Boston post in 2002 shocked the Church and brought abuse into the open. He had been living in Rome and was in declining health in recent years. The European Court of Justice has ruled that Uber is officially a transport company and not a digital service. The ride-hailing firm argued it was not a cab firm but an information society service. The case came after Uber was told it has to obey local taxi rules in Barcelona. Under EU law, the company must be classified as a service in the field of transport.
This is the time of the year when Mexicans take out their festive spirits by smashing piñatas. The piñatas are made from clay or cardboard, and once broken, they release a shower of sweets, nuts, and fruits. Some say it symbolizes releasing virtue from the clutches of the devil. The tradition goes back centuries, but it is uncertain if it has Aztec origins or it came first from China and was brought by the European conquistadores.
The first piñatas were star-shaped and have 7 spikes. Each of these 7 spikes represent a carnal sin. So that's why bashing the piñata is destroying carnal sins.
In the Greek suburb of Kypseli, an anti-consumerism market has reopened just in time for Christmas. We have more details in the next report.
A couple of color markers and plenty of imagination are enough to create a house, a dinosaur, or Christmas ornaments.
We are here in Kypseli's market because we have set up a toy building workshop. We welcome all children, from the little ones to the older ones, so that they may build their own toys.
The philosophy of the Christmas market is do it yourself. This way children begin to understand there is no need to buy things or spend a lot of money in order to celebrate Christmas. Here, they can even make the sweets they will share with their families.
The children, along with their parents, decorate cookies with sugar and color them any way they want.
The market also has room for social projects that take advantage of the season in order to finance projects that are developed throughout the year.
We sell second-hand objects to finance professional help for people with mental illness.
This initiative proves the best gift is not the most valuable one, but the one that passes on the most values.
And we've come to the end of this morning news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.